2018 FIFA World Cup, ladies and gentlemen, will be organized in Russia. 22 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
In the early hours of May 27, 2015, Swiss police walked into the five-star Barre du Lac hotel in Zurich and arrested some of the most powerful men in world football. Not mob bosses, not arms dealers, the executives who ran the global game. They were hauled out of their luxury suites in the pre-dawn darkness, hiding their faces behind hotel bedsheets as cameras rolled. The U.S. Department of Justice unsealed a 47-count indictment that same morning. The charges: racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. The alleged scheme: more than $150 million in bribes paid over 24 years to corrupt officials who had turned the world's most popular sport into a criminal enterprise. The U.S. Attorney General called it the World Cup of Fraud. It is a long way from where this all started. In 1930, FIFA had just over 40 member nations and almost no money. Its president, a French lawyer named Jules Rimet, wanted to create something the Olympics did not have: a world championship for football, open to professional players. He could barely convince anyone to come. Most of the strongest European teams refused to make the boat trip across the Atlantic. England would not even rejoin FIFA for another 16 years. In the end, just 13 nations competed in that first tournament, hosted in Uruguay, with the host nation covering almost every cost, and the golden trophy carried across the ocean in Rimet's own suitcase. Uruguay beat Argentina 4-2 in the final, in front of roughly 68,000 fans at a stadium still being finished as the tournament kicked off. There was no television, no sponsorship empire, no talk of billions of dollars. Just a tournament built on one man's stubborn belief that the world wanted to watch its best footballers compete. Less than a century later, that modest, broke, barely attended tournament has become the most watched event on the planet, and the organization running it has become the subject of the largest sports corruption prosecution in history. This is the story of how FIFA, the organization entrusted with protecting football, became its biggest predator, and why, 10 years later, almost nothing has actually changed. Section 1. How it went wrong. The corruption did not start with the men arrested in 2015. To understand how it happened, you have to go back to 1974 and the election of a Brazilian lawyer named João Havlanger as FIFA president. Havlanger transformed FIFA from a modest non-profit into a commercial powerhouse. He pursued massive corporate sponsorships and television rights deals that turned the World Cup into the most-watched sporting event on Earth. Adidas, Coca-Cola, and eventually a staggering array of global brands poured money in. With that river of cash came a new problem: too much money, too little oversight, and a culture of consolidated power where accountability was an afterthought. What started as informal back-scratching, favors between officials, quiet handshakes after meetings, slowly calcified into something much darker. By the 1990s, investigators would later allege corruption had become the unofficial operating system of FIFA. Not the exception, the method. This was the system a new generation of football executives would inherit. And, as prosecutors claimed, perfect. Section 2. How the scheme worked. The mechanics were simple and shameless. Sports marketing companies paid millions in bribes to corrupt FIFA officials and the heads of regional confederations. In exchange, those officials handed over lucrative media and marketing rights for major tournaments: Copa America, Gold Cup, World Cup qualifiers, without competitive bidding. Confidential information was leaked. Contracts were steered to friendly partners. Honest competition was eliminated. The U.S. Department of Justice outlined a conspiracy spanning 24 years and more than $150 million in bribes and kickbacks flowing through American banks, which is exactly how the FBI got jurisdiction over a Swiss organization running a global sport. But it was not just about television rights. Allegations swirled that the corruption decided where the World Cup itself was held. FIFA's own internal reports later admitted that executive committee members had abused their positions and sold their votes on hosting decisions. The pinnacle of international sport, the dream of every football nation on Earth, was allegedly being auctioned off in hotel rooms with cash in envelopes. The rot implicated officials across CONCACAF in North and Central America, CONMEBOL in South America, and reached into Africa and Europe. As one U.S. Attorney General put it, the corruption was rampant, systemic, and deep-rooted. Section 3. The vote that broke everything. For years, rumors of corruption floated around FIFA and were mostly dismissed as sour grapes from losing bidders. Then came December 2nd, 2010. FIFA's Executive Committee awarded the 2018 World Cup to Russia and the 2022 World Cup to Qatar. Qatar, a desert nation the size of Connecticut. Summer temperatures exceeding 45 degrees Celsius. No football heritage. No football infrastructure. A population of under 3 million. A country that had never qualified for a World Cup. The choice defied every sporting logic imaginable. The United States, Australia, South Korea, and Japan had all submitted credible bids. Qatar's bid won anyway. The decision was so audacious, so impossible to explain through any legitimate footballing rationale, that it became impossible to ignore. Journalists started pulling threads. Investigators opened files. And as they did, the entire rotten structure of FIFA's dealings began to unravel. The Qatar vote did not start the corruption. It just made it undeniable. Section 4. The Fall. The Zurich arrests in May 2015 were just the opening act. The 47-count indictment named 9 current and former FIFA officials and 5 corporate executives. 2 sitting FIFA vice presidents, Jeffrey Webb and Eugenio Figueiredo, were among those arrested in their hotel suites. Swiss authorities simultaneously raided FIFA headquarters and seized mountains of data. Then came the truly surreal sequence of events. 2 days after the raids, Sepp Blatter, FIFA's president for 17 years, the man who had presided over the entire corrupt era, was re-elected for a 5th term. The FIFA member associations voted for him anyway. 4 days after that, he resigned. Blatter's fall triggered a domino effect. FIFA's Ethics Committee banned him and UEFA President Michel Platini from all football activities for 8 years, later reduced. Secretary General Jerome Valcke was banned for 12 years. The U.S. investigation ultimately charged more than 50 individuals and corporate defendants from over 20 countries. Most pleaded guilty. The organization that called itself the Guardian of the Beautiful Game had become the subject of the largest sports corruption prosecution in history. Section 5. Qatar and what followed. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar went ahead anyway. It was held in November and December rather than June and July because of the heat, a scheduling change that disrupted every domestic football league on earth. It was built on the labor of migrant workers from South Asia and Africa, with human rights organizations reporting thousands of deaths during construction. Workers had their passports confiscated, their wages withheld, and their freedom of movement restricted under the kafala system. FIFA collected record revenues. Gianni Infantino, the new president elected on a reform platform in 2016, delivered a speech from Doha in which he said, "Today I feel Qatari. Today I feel Arab. Today I feel African. Today I feel gay. Today I feel disabled." It was widely described as one of the most bizarre speeches ever given by a major international sports executive. The tournament itself was widely praised as well-organized and entertaining, which, to many observers, was precisely the point. The sport's quality was used to paper over everything surrounding it. Section 6. Has anything changed? FIFA promised a new era under Infantino. Financial transparency, reformed bidding processes, a strengthened ethics code. The U.S. Department of Justice even recognized FIFA as a victim of its own corrupt officials and awarded it over $201 million in forfeited funds to be reinvested in the sport. Critics are not impressed. A 2024 report from the NGO Fair Square argued that FIFA is structurally resistant to reform, that its patronage system uses development funds to buy the loyalty of its 211 member associations, making genuine accountability impossible as long as those associations elect the president. An open letter in May 2025, marking 10 years since the Zurich arrests, argued that FIFA is arguably more poorly governed today than it was 10 years ago. The legal outcomes have been mixed at best. Blatter and Platini were acquitted of fraud in Swiss courts in 2022 and again on appeal in March 2025. In May 2026, A U.S. judge dismissed the long-running bribery case against a former Fox executive connected to the scandal after the Department of Justice said it was no longer a priority. Nobody at the very top of FIFA has gone to prison. The organization continues to generate billions. The 2026 World Cup, hosted across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, is projected to be the most commercially lucrative in history. The game goes on. The money flows. The questions remain. The FIFA scandal is not a story about a few greedy men who got caught. It is a story about what happens when an institution accumulates billions of dollars, faces zero meaningful external oversight, and operates through a voting structure that rewards loyalty over accountability. The corruption was not a bug in the system. It was the system. The arrests in 2015 were real. The guilty pleas were real. The $150 million in bribes was real. But the structure that made all of it possible, the 211 member associations, the opaque voting, the commercial empire with no independent regulator, that structure is still there. Jules Rimet built FIFA to bring nations together through a sport he believed could do what politics could not. João Havlanger turned that idea into a commercial machine. The people who came after him used that machine to make themselves rich. And the sports fans, the billions of people who genuinely love the game, were the ones who paid for it. In inflated ticket prices, in rights fees baked into subscription costs, in World Cups handed to countries that had no business hosting them. The beautiful game survived. Whether the institution entrusted to protect it ever truly reformed, that is still an open question. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think FIFA has genuinely changed, or is the corruption still running just below the surface? Because a lot of people who cover this closely think they know the answer. Subscribe to Stag Research for more breakdowns like this, the institutions and systems that shape our world, and what they actually look like when you pull back the curtain.